Undercurrent, sponsored by John Hughes in Victoria Park. Choose your station before you choose your program. Absolutely.
Well, our Miles Riley is never one to shy away from a tough story. Next up, she takes a closer look at the plight of skilled migrants.
Australia's refusal to ratify the United Nations Migrant Workers Convention means that new migrants and their families are at an extreme disadvantage in terms of housing, employment and education.
The biggest issue is you can get migration on the basis of your qualification, but when you come here, it is really a struggle to find an employment, which is already struggling with a shortage of workforce. So we get to know that a lot of engineers are required in Australia. There are people who are coming on that basis, but when they come here, they are denied jobs on the basis of they are either too qualified or they are underqualified. But then why did they get that immigration in the first place?
It's hard because there's nobody to guide you, and as I studied in Pakistan, and the way they teach is pretty different from the way they teach in Australia, so I'm finding it hard to cope here. And as there's nobody to guide me about like which subjects should I take, like what is waste, I don't even know.
They should give some methods how we can adjust easily into our profession. They should build up a bridge. If we need some courses, they should guide us.
I didn't know like how teachers here test, because I was used to their like perspective of teaching in Pakistan. They teach in a different manner. You have to learn everything page by page, but over here they're like you have to think, you have to read and then think and write your own way.
From what I understand, there are 215 million postcards that are being printed, and what we want to do is to make sure that everyone in the community sends these postcards in to the Prime Minister, and what they're calling for is for the Prime Minister to think far more carefully about ratifying the International Convention for Migrant Workers.
So we can't get a shelter because everywhere we go, our previous record is asked, and nobody has a previous record. No electrical bills, no telephone bills. So obviously, you are not given a house on rent.
They don't know people, and they have no experience in Australia, which is a big barrier. Even when you go for finding a house, they ask you whether you've been in a house, and when you say you haven't, they say like, we can't give you the house. So if it's just for houses, then it's a bigger issue for jobs. Like they're like, you have to give 2 references in your CV, but you don't know people, so how are you going to give your references?
I can work in 1,000 ways, but here, wherever I apply, I get 2 answers. Number 1, either it's too low for me to go, and number 2, they say that you are overqualified.
Like other migrants who are not from, who are non-English, and they've never spoken English in their life, they find it harder as they can't speak the language. They don't know much about the thinking of people who speak English, so they find it hard to connect with them.
I think we need to look carefully at making sure that we have the right support mechanisms in place. When people come into our country, they may find themselves a bit dislocated and disoriented, and they bring, not all, but some bring some real problems around the traumas that they've suffered before they get here. There's a need to support people so that they make a transition into this culture and this environment.
Then they are bringing with themselves a lot of cultural diversity, and that is the most beautiful part of Australia.
I'm Miles Riley reporting for Undercurrent.
Have you ever looked at the results of a survey and wondered how on earth they came to that conclusion? Well, next up we investigate how the official unemployment data is surveyed.
Unemployment. What can you do in 20 million hours? So this week, Craig, the official unemployment rate came out, and as usual, it was a lie. According to the Australian Bureau of Statistics official figures, the rate rose from 5.1% in May to 5.2% in June, which is it's a rise in the rate because jobs are being lost. something like 27,000 full-time jobs were lost, 6,000 part-time jobs were created. Right, so that was the unemployment picture according to the official statistics. Now that's a 0.1% drop in employment. 0.1%. Remember that figure. Because compare that to this figure. Instead of counting the number of people who worked, count the number of hours worked for the whole month, across everybody, for the whole country, right? Aggregate hours worked in June in Australia was down sharply from May by 1.2%. Total hours, which comes up to 19.6 million hours less worked, right? Nearly 20 million hours. How can you lose 1.2% of total hours but only 0.1% of total jobs?
Well, I don't know how that's possible, Robbie, but I was just thinking as you're talking, you know, we now have in Australia a service economy where there's about 60% of people employed in service industry. Now, if you took 20 million jobs out of factories, right, that would represent a real collapse in the physical...
20 million hours. 20
million hours, sorry, not jobs, but out of factories, you would have a real drop in employment.
Well, let me explain something technical to the viewers. The Australian Bureau of Statistics figures are based on a broad survey over the phone conducted each month. And the survey asks 3 questions.
Well, Robbie, they're statistics. I mean, they can be manipulated and turned around, turned on their head. They actually, the statistics themselves mean nothing. But what you've got to look at is the directionality of these statistics, which they can't hide. It's going up. You know, it's 0.1%, you know, from we were saying 5.1 to 2. It's going up. Now, the fact is it's lies. It's not, from what you've said, it's completely not true. Well, what else do we have to look at? Look at the total mix of the economy. As I said before, 60% of the economy is involved in service activities or similar. Now, that actually to any physical economy is classed as overhead because you're not producing real wealth. And in terms of LaRouche's physical economics, you've got to say, well, what are the productive parts of the economy? You know, the manufacturing sector, the agricultural sector. What's happening in those sectors? They're dying. As we see every day on news reports, more and more manufacturers are being put out of work. Family farms are disappearing. Actual family farms, not corporate farming, but family farms are disappearing. So when you look at the unemployment figures, they only represent a very weak shadow of the reality of what's going on in the Australian economy. And the problem is, one, the mix. We're getting more and more into a service-based economy, which is a disaster. And secondly, the lying that goes on. I mean, I think you could close to double what's going on here, Robbie. Somewhere between what the ABS is saying at 12% and double that figure is somewhere around the real figure.
Well, what do we hear virtually every day now on the news? And it's like no sector of the economy is spared. The latest one this week is Darrell Lea, for crying out loud, the chocolate factory. Myers has just announced another 100. It's just every day you're getting these announcements right across the economy.
Yeah, this is because we're based on a serviced economy. We're not interested in the real issues of developing our fundamental physical economy, of producing things these days. And we've got very much used to this over the last 40 to 50 years, and it's a real problem.
And just briefly, what would we do to get people back to work in a hurry?
Well, you have to begin processes of putting tariff controls in to protect our own local industries, that which is left, so you can reinvigorate manufacturing, go with national banking to support manufacturing, providing the credits necessary to expand that particular sector. We'd have a whole program for agriculture to keep and provide incentives for family farmers, you know, take the debt burden off with debt moratorium, that sort of thing. I mean, we have a whole raft of these sorts of policies which are outside the normal free market ideas, but they actually support the real physical economy. That's why they work, yeah.
Next up on Undercurrent, Nick Hayes has a chat with the multi-talented James Lush.
James Lush, thanks for joining Undercurrent. Congratulations on the Telstra News Limited Micro Business Award. Fantastic result for you.
We're thrilled. I mean, it's an accolade that you obviously sort of hope that one day you will get. It's a process that is very sort of tough to go through, But having got there and having won it, fantastic, and it's a real stamp of approval.
What does it mean for the business?
I think it's the credibility. It's the fact that having, over the last few years, worked with some of the biggest companies here in WA and hopefully done great work for them, it's an outside body and the Telstra body coming along and recognising, having done their due diligence, that this is a really good business.
Your competitors there, it was a pretty big list of West Australian businesses that were doing some great things. What was it like to knock them over?
Well, it's interesting, whenever you're up for an award, you always assume that everyone else is going to win it and you're going to be the one that's sort of just clapping and saying, oh, well, never mind, made next year. When you do win it, you look at the others and think, oh, crikey, we must be better than them. And that's very satisfying. And I mean, for a small business to do what we've done, we're absolutely thrilled.
How's the show going on Saturday? You've had a few changes amongst the system there. You've been doing it for a few years. How's it? You're still getting up early in the morning?
It doesn't necessarily get much easier, especially when we're so busy Monday to Friday. But come Saturday, I mean, it is the one show I do a week, which means that it becomes a joy and a pleasure and a hobby. Doing it 5 days a week becomes a chore and much more draining. But once a week I can get that passion and can still get up for it. As soon as I find that it's a bit of an effort to get up and I don't really want to go and talk to anyone on a Saturday, then we might think about changing.
There's been a few changes down at the ABC, a little bit of a mix-up, of the talent, and Wolfie's on holidays. I should say Russell Wolf. Is the mix right for the ABC with John McGlew in the mornings and Hutchison in the afternoons?
I can't really say on who goes where and who does what, but I can say that getting up early for many years is draining, and I don't blame Jeff wanting to just say, do you mind if I just have a little bit of a line for a few months? So he's now doing Drive, which will be great to recharge his batteries. John McGlew, I mean, he's a very experienced businessman. He's a very experienced journalist. To do the two for him for a few months, that's perfect.
And what's next for Lush TV? Telstra Business Award. You've won the WA category. Can you go on and win the big one?
Well, that's in Sydney in just a few weeks. We'll go to that, and you never expect to get this far. When you start to sort of move up and move into another competition, of course you enter it and you hope that you're going to win it. If we do win it, it'd be great for us, great for a WA business to be a winner. What does it do for us? I guess, again, it's that stamp of approval. It's the tick of approval that this is a really good business, and hopefully it means that we can continue to work with the biggest companies here in WA.
And James, if you were to give one piece of advice to a local West Australian business, what's the key to success?
Go with your heart and stick with it, and make sure that you really have that goal in sight at all times. You know what you want to do, and really work hard to do the best you can, and don't ever quit.
James, thanks for joining Undercurrent.
Well, that brings us to the end of another week of Undercurrent. We certainly hope you enjoyed the school holidays if you were lucky enough to get them. And don't forget, we'd always love to hear from you, especially if you have any ideas. You can email us at info@wtvperth.com.au. Can't wait to see you next week for more of Western Australia's very own Undercurrent.
Undercurrent, sponsored by John Hughes in Victoria Park. Choose your station before you choose your program. Absolutely.